Good afternoon. So here we are. Today's objective will be students will be able to use the properties of parallelograms to find missing measurements. So we're going to be able to use some properties here to be able to determine what a measurement might be or just to solve for x. So a few things that we need to know are some of the properties. So first thing we're going to get started with is this opposite sides are parallel. So if you remember from a previous lesson, we know things are parallel because there's an arrow on the line. So we know those two sides are parallel. Then we have another set of sides that are parallel also. Well, these are going in a different direction, so we got to notate that differently. So these two are parallel to each other, and then these blue arrows are parallel to each other. So pink is parallel with pink and blue is parallel with blue. Now we're talking about opposite sides being congruent. So not only are they parallel, but they're also congruent. So what that means is this side is congruent to this side, and then this side is congruent to this side. Remember, we use tick marks for congruent sides or congruent segments. Next, we have opposite angles. Now, opposite angles are across from each other. So one thing we might want to start making a note of is the fact that opposite means across from each other. So opposite angles, meaning angles across from each other, are congruent to each other. So this angle is congruent to this angle. These are across from each other. So those two angles are congruent. Next, we have our other opposite angles, and those two guys are congruent to each other. So this one is congruent to this guy. And again, the number of arcs represents whether or not they're congruent to each other. So the two arcs are congruent to each other, and then the one arc is congruent to each other. The next part is consecutive angles are supplementary. So consecutive meaning one after the other. So if we were to label these angles or these vertices A, B, C, D, B is right after A. So A and B are consecutive angles. B and C are consecutive angles. And it's on purpose that we name them with alphabet because, you know, they're easier to keep track of. So we know our consecutive angles are A and B and C. So we can say that angle A plus angle B equals, well, we need to remember, what does supplementary mean? Supplementary means two angles whose sum is 180 degrees. And that's going to keep coming back. Supplementary, complementary, all that stuff is going to keep coming back. So we know that these two are consecutive and they're supplementary. We can also say that angle C plus angle B is 180 degrees. Can you think of another set of angles that would be supplementary? So go ahead and think about that. go ahead and write down what you think might be the sets of angles that are supplementary. And this is what we should have written. Angle C plus angle D is 180, and angle A plus angle D is 180. Again, they're consecutive. So you go all the way around, they're going to be one right after the other. And then the last property that we have is diagonals bisect each other. Ooh, that's a tricky one. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw two diagonals, one from D to B and from A to C. So go ahead and draw those diagonals now. So we have our diagonals. Now we know that these go across. They're from one angle to the opposite angle. So if ever you forget which ones are opposite, you can draw your diagonals. So we can say that segment AC and segment BD bisect each other, which means they're going to intersect right here. And we're going to go ahead and call this point E. Now remember, bisect means cut exactly in half, two equal parts. So we have this part equal to this part, and then we have this part equal to this part. All of these little relationships in one tiny parallelogram. Or big parallelogram, however you want to see it. But these are all the important relationships we're going to need to know today. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and look at this guy right here. And we're going to need these properties up here to help us out. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with a simple solve for x. So one thing we need to know is that LM is 9x minus 25, and then PN is 5x plus 7. So this is our given. We already know that this right here is our given. Our unknown is in the question. So our unknown is the value of x. Our equation is going to come from our picture. So our equation is going to be given somewhere in our little figure right here. So what's one thing we know about these two sides? Hopefully you remember that the two sides are, congruent. So that means this side is congruent to this side. And that goes back to this one. Opposite sides are congruent. So we know that our equation is going to be LM is congruent to PN. And these are segments, so we need to make sure we put our notation. The next step will be to substitute. So we're going to go ahead and substitute our values in. So we're going to go ahead and substitute 9x minus 25 is equal to 5x plus 7. And we're going to go ahead and solve. So go ahead and solve, and then we'll come back and check. All right, so you should have followed all your inverse operations and gotten x equals 8. Now, the question should be, are we done yet? So you're going to go check over here in the unknown. Well, it's the value of x. Is that what this is right here? Yes, it is. So bingo, that's our answer, and we are done for now. And now we come to this guy right here. So go ahead and copy your diagram, and then we're going to go ahead and move on. So make sure you hit pause and copy. All right, so we're going to go ahead and use some of the properties that we talked about before. So one of the things we're going to notice is that we're given diagonals. We're also given some sides right here. We're also given the length, RT, is this diagonal right here, RT, is 30. So we're going to go ahead and say, well, this is our given. This right here is our given guy. So in this given, can I go label stuff? Of course I can. I should know one of the things is that opposite sides are congruent. So I know this side is congruent to this side. And then this side is congruent to this side. I also know this guy is congruent to this guy because diagonals bisect each other. So we have two equal parts on the diagonals. This is congruent to this, and then this guy, I'm not going to fill it up with a whole bunch of lines. So I'm going to use my Roman numerals to help me like go through. So RV is congruent to VT because, well, they're bisected. So now we can go through and start looking for these unknowns. So this unknown, or this list of unknowns, is going to come from this guy. So we're going to start with UT. So UT is the same as RS. Well, how much is RS? Boom, it's 27. So I already know this is 27. And I can make a note right here that UT is congruent to RS. That way I don't forget. So then the next one, ST. Well, if you look, ST is congruent to RU. So ST and RU are congruent, which means if this is 18, then this is also 18. So I'm going to go ahead and make that, and then I'm going to go ahead and make my little note here, because these are my notes and I don't want to forget where these numbers are coming from. So ST is congruent to RU. Alright, so let's look at VS. Well, VS is this segment right here. It's part of the diagonal. So VS is congruent to this one right here because they're marked the same. So that means this guy is 7, which means VS is 7. So I'm going to make another little note right here that VS is congruent to UV. And we got another one to go. VT. So VT is this piece right here. And it's congruent to RV. But I don't know RV. There's no notation here. So, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Well, right here, this bad boy. RT is 30. And it's being split. So I'm going to make a note right here. RT is bisected. Which means cut in half. So what's half of 30? So I'm going to take this 30 and I'm going to divide it by 2 because it was divided into 2 equal parts, which gives me 15. Which means this bad boy right here is 15 and this bad boy is 15. So 15 and 15 will give me this 30. So VT happens to be just one piece of the entire diagonal. So that means VT is 15. And this comes from this set of notes. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in a puffy cloud. Again, these are my notes, so this is all my thought process. And last but not least, this guy. Right now, you're going, but I don't know where to even start. Well, you should remember This little guy right here. Consecutive angles are supplementary. But Miss Carpio, there's this guy right here. This is split. Well, let's not fret so quickly. So we know Q and R are consecutive. So this is a given. We're going to use our picture here to say that angle Q and angle R are consecutive. And what does that mean? Well, that means that angle Q plus angle R equals 180. Remember, consecutive angles are supplementary. Now, this is where you need to think. You gotta think, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, these two tiny pieces make up this entire angle. I'm going to say that again. These two tiny pieces make this angle right here. So angle R is two pieces. So I know that angle Q plus angle R, I forgot the letter, is equal to 180. Well, angle Q is 70. And angle R has two pieces. So I'm going to make sure I put those in there. 33 plus 9x minus 4 equals 180. Again, remember, these two pieces equal angle R. So now I can go ahead and solve. So go ahead and solve. All right. You've solved and you get x equals 9. Hopefully, that makes sense. Now, there's a way to check it. You can always plug this in to find this measure of this angle. So, if I do that, we're going to go ahead and substitute in. So, 9 times 9 minus 4. And this is again coming from 9x minus 4, just in case you're wondering. I'm substituting it back in. So 9 times 9 is 81 minus 4. Oh my goodness, yes, it's 77. So this guy right here should be 77. This right here should be 77. Now if you really want to go even further, you can add these three guys and it should equal 180. So go ahead, check it. Does it equal 180? If it does, you are golden and you've done everything successfully. If it doesn't equal 180, then something went horribly wrong and you need to shoot me a message saying, hey, Carpio, something is wrong with this one here. So good luck. On to the next slide. On to the independent practice.